Good morning. I'm Nathen.
We want to talk about the future of automation and
Where are we headed?
Maybe a little of the DevOps.
Yeah.
We've never done this talk together before. In fact, I don't know that you've ever done this talk before. And I'm not sure this stage has ever had two people talking at the same time.
It's cool.
We're going to stay as far apart as possible.
We'll make it work. I don't actually like him.
Video
so I'm just
guys.
gonna stay over here.
Video guy's freaking out right
Yeah,
now.
it's tough. Widescreen.
He's like, I don't care, it's fine. I got you. Okay, so let's first have you all stand up because it's breakfast time
it's
and you're a
early.
little sleeping early.
On your feet.
Everybody's up.
Everybody up.
Do a little something if you got to. It's cool.
There you go.
Stretch. Everybody ready? That looks good. What's up, Israel?
Yeah.
Okay. So during the course of this talk, we're gonna do a lot of saying words like you and we and I and those sorts of things. And when I do that, I'm talking about you, guy, everybody.
You.
I'm talking about everybody.
All y'all.
So even if a particular moment you're like, I don't think that this one is for me, it super is. I'm talking to you directly. So when we say those things, who are we talking to? Yeah, me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Yeah. Yes. Me. Okay, sit down. Fine. Jeez.
It's good.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, that's the slide I want to show. This is my first rodeo.
That's the one. This is the one. So, this weird thing about technology, how many of you today manage mail servers? How many
Couple
of you have
people.
ever managed mail servers? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So the interesting thing I think about technology and where we are with DevOps is technology is moving us all much closer to our customers. We're getting and having to care a lot more about our end users. Who are the customers for our business? When you're managing a mail server, what you maybe care about are your coworkers. You don't necessarily care so much about the end user, the customer of your business. But today, as part of DevOps, we have to start focusing on the customer. We are enabling the customer. The customer comes to us through technology. That's transformative. It's very, very different than the old days.
Yep, and it's the reason that DevOps exists, right? Like the reason we couldn't just keep doing things the way that we were doing them in the 80s and the 90s is because all of a sudden our infrastructure jobs were customer-facing jobs, and that was weird. Thank you, internet. And one of the things that we learned in the course of doing that is that you can't get closer to customers and deliver that kind of value through technology if you don't build incredibly great teams, right? If you can't figure out how to work well together with people in groups that are tight and high performing, then you tend to fail to meet those customer expectations in a way that wasn't necessarily true when we ran a mail server, right? You didn't necessarily need a team to run a mail server. Like pretty much you could just set the thing up and be like, yep, the queues are fine. And you just sort of went through your day and everything was cool.
And then today, we get to work with all this great new technology. So how many of you have tried something new in the last year? Any new technology? Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
New stuff.
Did you have this experience? You heard about this new thing and you tried it out.
It was cool.
It was amazing. It was so good. Adam, I'm using this new thing and let's go to production with it.
Is it Docker?
It might be Docker.
Yeah, it's probably Docker.
It was so amazing. I ran just one little Docker run it and I had this whole thing.
Yeah, you did. How many people have typed Docker run?
Yeah.
How many people think that was basically the coolest thing you've typed in the last 10 years?
Yeah, it was
okay.
pretty.
My hand's
pretty
still
dope.
up. It was awesome. Can I swear? Can we
I
swear in
don't
Israel?
know. Can we swear in Israel?
All right, it was pretty fucking cool, right?
Was.
Okay. Yeah.
Permission to swear.
Yeah, it's Chef 2. So for the record, you could swap this for any technology. We're not picking on Docker.
Nope.
This is just as true about Chef or any other thing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But you start with, you start out and it feels good.
Yeah,
right?
it feels super good, and it maybe gets a little bit harder, but then you feel like you've reached the peak, and now we're really let's take this all the way through to production. Let's go.
Yeah, you wrote that compose file, right?
Yeah.
And you were like, this feels really good, and then you're like, man, we should deploy the application in production in Docker. It's gonna be the best, right?
Yeah.
And you look around and everybody's into it, and then you decide to do it. And this is what we call the peak of false hope. Do you see that little arrow? There with the smiley face?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the peak of false hope. So
We got this.
you're climbing up the hill, you're like, yeah, production, this is going to be good. And then an amazing thing happens. It kind of works the way you thought it would. So for the first little bit there where you're rolling out production, you're like, yeah, yes, crushed it, fine, yes, right? And then you get to what we call the production cliff, and that is the sadness. And it's essentially just like this, like a person comes into your life with a 2x4 with nails in it.
Yes.
And they just beat you up until you relent. The amazing thing about this is that in general, we overcome the production cliff. So how many people, run Chef? A few of you, and you run it in production. And how much did it sucked a little to get it into production, yeah? Okay, it's fine, you can still raise your hands.
Cool.
It sucked a little, I wrote it, it's fine.
And then you had to make it HA.
Yeah, right? And so it sucked to get into production, and we overcome it, and then we go to like DevOps Days in Tel Aviv, and we get up and we give a talk about how easy it was, and how like good and together the technology was that we just used. We go on and we're like, oh my God, you should totally run Docker. And then you go home and you try to do it, and then it's awful. And then you're like, wait a minute, that talk at DevOps Days Tel Aviv made it sound like this was like gravy. Does anybody play video games? I play video games. Yeah? All right. This is Dark Souls 3. Anybody play Dark Souls 3? Yeah, that guy. What's up, dude? You know what I'm talking about. His hand went not just a little high, it went all the way high. Yeah. And there's a reason, and I'm going to tell you right now. So this game's incredible, and it really illustrates my point about the production cliff. This game is incredible in part because it's incredibly difficult. Like, you have to really learn to play it. And so I'm the knight there with the shining armor, as you might expect. And then there's that dude with that little red cape. And that dude kicked my ass for 24 full hours. Like, I would walk into the little room where he was. This is not a boss, by the way. It's like if you were playing Super Mario and that little mushroom just killed you for 24 hours, right? He's not special, he's just a dude. And it beat for 24 hours, right? And so I'm playing this game, and my family is asleep. I have a daughter and a wife, and they're all in bed, and I'm like way past my bedtime because I'm now old, and I should be in bed by like 10, and it's like 3 in the morning, and this night's been killing me for like 18 hours, and I'm all sweaty and yucky, and
smelled a little bad.
So much. And then I killed that goddamn knight. You know what I mean? Like, I finally did it. And thank you so much. And I gotta tell you, I love my daughter so much. And I felt as good when I killed that knight as I did when she was born. I was like, yes! Like, I had accomplished something that was meaningful and rare, and like, it brought it home in a way that really like meant something to me. And sometimes we love a thing because that thing was hard and we have triumphed. Running a marathon. Like, why do people love to run marathons? It's probably fun. I've never run one. But imagine it's really hard. And once you do it, you're like, yeah, like I did this hard thing. You climb a mountain. You beat the knight in Dark Souls 3. That dude back there is like, you are awful at Dark Souls 3. He was like, I killed that guy in like 10 minutes or whatever. It was not a problem. But, right, get good, exactly. Okay, so here's the thing. I'm not talking about, and this is good, like sometimes it's good to love things because they're hard, but I'm not talking about that kind of hard. I'm talking about the kind of hard where how many people have ever gotten in a fight with your spouse because you had a bad week at work? Okay, I hate myself when I do that, right? Like that's the worst version of me that like finds the people I love and then takes out on them all of the things I can't take out on my environment. I'm talking about that kind of thing, that thing in the pit of your stomach where you think you know what to do, and then you make a bet on something, and then it looks like it might not pan out, and it sort of eats away at you on the insides because you feel like you're failing everyone who relies on you. I'm talking about that, right?
Anyone in here ever felt that? I didn't think so.
Yeah.
That's just
no.
you. Yeah. I'd like you to raise your hand if in the last 30 days you've said, I hate this piece of technology, this software. Keep them up. That's the last 30 days. Okay.
60 days?
Last 60. Uh-huh.
How about 90 days?
90 days? Okay. If your hand is not currently up, I want you to put it up, and everyone who had their hand up, put your hands back down, right? Okay, all of you with your hands up now are liars.
Yeah.
Right? Because you've definitely said that you hate.
You totally said you
hate
hated
that
something.
Piece of software.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's weird, right? I mean, I've given this talk now in a bunch of different places, different countries, different cultures. This slide pretty much is a universal translation machine to the experience of working in software. You're just like, yep, no, I hate that. Yep, hate it. And it's weird that the word we choose to use is hate. We're not like, oh, I really disliked that them. It did a bad thing to me.
That was unfortunate.
Yeah, no, you hate it, right? Like, hate it in a way that is super duper interesting. So there's a Zen story.
Yeah, so I was walking through the desert, and I saw Adam come up on a horse.
Right, I'm on my horse.
He's galloping along. I said, hey, Adam.
I can't do horse.
Where are you going?
Who knows? Ask the horse. You get it?
Get it?
You don't get it. It's a Zen story, so it takes a second. Okay, so you're in the desert, and there's a horse, and he comes by, and he sees his friend, right?
Yeah.
And the friend says,
where are you going?
and you go, I don't know. Ask the horse. And in this little analogy, the horse is technology, right? It's going wherever it's going. We're not in control of the horse.
You're along for the ride.
I don't know. Like, is it right? Is it good? Is it better? Does it make our lives better? Does it solve our customers? Who knows? I can tell you for sure, though, I'm definitely going to deploy Chef. You know? I'm doing it. What am I doing? Deploying Chef. Why am I doing it? Who knows, man? Going where the horse is taking me. This is Thich Nhat Hanh. Thich Nhat Hanh is a Vietnamese Buddhist monk. He was kicked out of Vietnam during the Vietnam War. Martin Luther King nominated him for a Nobel Peace Prize. And he's probably the foremost living practitioner of mindful meditation on the planet. He's amazing. And this incredible venerated monk went to Google and gave a talk, which is weird, but awesome. And this is what he said.
If technology can help you go home to yourself and take care of your anger, take care of your despair, take care of your loneliness, if technology helps you create joyful feelings, happy feelings for yourself and for your beloved ones, it's going in a good way, and you can make good use of technology.
And this is from a talk. You can see it on the Intertrons. It's called The Horse is Technology. And what I think Thich Nhat Hanh was trying to say here is that we have a choice about how we build the technology that we're going to build to solve our problems and to help each other and to solve problems for our customers. And we either intentionally build software that helps people come back to themselves and to live better lives and to not hate what they do and to not sort of have to constantly go through that production cliff. Or we can just let the horse go where it's going, right? We could just do whatever comes along and hope that what happens on the other side is better than what you have today. And I submit that that would be foolish, because I, for one, I'm almost 40, and I've been in technology since I was 16, and I don't want to do it anymore if it's just more of the constant cycle of us sort of hurting each other, both in the software we build and in the way we deploy it. It's not fun. It sucks, and I don't want to be woken up at 2 in the morning and like have those arguments. And so I submit that we should figure out how to build software that is fundamentally more humane.
Humane, yeah. Having or showing compassion or benevolence. We need to think about the other humans that are interacting with our software, both ourselves as developers, the operations people that are running our software, our customers, and we need to treat them all humanely.
Yeah, and when you think about things that are humane, they have a tendency to make the civilizations we build better, right? Like we tend to build things that they're more inclusive, they work better, they have less strife, and they come together better. And so if we want to build more humane software, where do we start? What do we do first? And the first thing you have to realize is that we don't get there by doing what we have done before, right? Prior to this, we were just letting the horse sort of run the game, right? And luckily, we have a lot of tools to be able to do that. Tel Aviv has an incredible startup scene, right? You're incredibly innovative. You build great software all the time to solve all sorts of really interesting problems. And all over the world, we're in this moment where we get to innovate and we actually get to create what the future of that next piece of technology will be. And it will go really, really quickly. And so if we're going to solve this problem, we won't get there by just doing the thing we did before a little better. We're going to need to actually sit down and figure out how to reinvent from the foundation why and how we do what we do.
and it starts with the culture. It's the culture of our organizations. It's how we work together with one another. And that culture gets reinforced by the technology.
Yep, and in the middle, you have people. So a good way to think about culture and technology is reinforcing things. Imagine that you go to work and your boss says, we're going to do DevOps now, right? Like, we're a DevOps culture. And you're like, okay, that sounds great. I'm excited about doing DevOps. What's that mean? And you're like, it means we can deploy faster. And they're like, great. And so then you're like, well, can I change how we deploy? Because right now I have to like use this system that takes like a week and goes through like a CAB, like a change review board, before I can deploy anything, and it takes a month and a half to get through, so we're gonna just not do that anymore, right? And they're like, no, we super need a CAB, but we're definitely DevOps, so you should DevOps harder. Go faster, everybody. No technology changes, right? What happens to you as a person? You're like, DevOps is bullshit. I don't like this. Why? This is like Agile all over again, and I just want to go home and cover myself in a blanket and play Dark Souls 3. Okay, so one thing you can take from this talk, if you take only one thing, you can kind of forget about everything else we're going to say. If you want to figure out how to build more humane software, you have to start from a place that's fundamentally more humane. And one of the most humane things that I know of is the idea of Ubuntu. This is an African philosophy, Desmond Tutu, South Africa. What's great about Ubuntu is you can learn Ubuntu like right now without having to do a whole lot of work. You don't need to like go take a class and do a bunch of philosophy. And you can really boil Ubuntu down to this. It is this phrase, I am because you are, right? You want to say it? Give it a shot. Because you are. Yeah, it's super easy. Look at you. You already got it. You learned so quick.
Right.
Okay, so then the next piece of this is a pretty simple little coda, which is when I suffer, when you suffer, I suffer, and when you thrive, I thrive, right? This is the spirit of Ubuntu. And so if we really want to build more humane, better software, I think we could start from this place of Ubuntu, where what we held in our mind when we made decisions was this fundamentally. We would start to have a pretty good guide for how to build better software. And so if we started from a spirit of Ubuntu, we would need to build more inclusive organizations.
Absolutely. So when we think about inclusion, we often talk about diversity, but really inclusion is where it starts. We have to start by building an inclusive organization. And so there's this woman, Jay Goodsby Smith, who wrote this book on inclusion, and she included 7 different factors. 7?
I think there's 9.
There might be 9. 7 to 9 factors of inclusion. The first one is a connection to something bigger. Interpersonal, so we must act mutually, we must act together.
Yep, the thing about mutual inclusion, so I can build a system that is inclusive. I can say you can participate. If you choose not to, if you're like, I don't want to, then inclusion breaks down, right? Like everybody has to actually want to do it.
Yeah. Communication, we have to communicate what's happening. We have to be open with that communication and share it with everyone in the room.
We have to mentor each other and help each other learn and grow.
We have to care.
Yeah.
We support each other when it gets hard.
Yep.
Not when it's easy. Well,
right.
Also when it's easy.
Also when it's easy, but mostly when it's hard, right? When your coworker is having a bad day, when the lawyer is having a bad day and is causing problems, like you need to actually care about each other.
Yeah.
You need to be fair.
Anyone here with their manager?
Yeah. Anybody here with their boss?
Like a boss?
Nobody brought their boss? Do you have an employee here with you? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Who's the boss? You're the boss?
Yeah.
How much vacation do you get? Yeah,
A year. Yeah.
Hey, how about you? So you guys might not be able to hear it. So the answer from the boss was enough. And then I asked the employee, how much do you get? And he laughed and went, yeah, okay. Right? Is that fair? Does he work less hard? You're on vacation right now. That's adorable. Your boss is here super not on vacation. Okay. Yeah. I'm not, I mean, I'm kind of on vacation, and I'm working. So,
yeah.
So when you think about work-life balance and fairness, the thing to understand about it is that fairness, if it leaks into everything you do. So people sense those small unfairnesses, and it hurts our ability to include others. I'm sure you have a fine vacation policy and are a great boss. Everything's cool.
Absolutely. Okay. And we just made it visible.
Yeah.
So visibility, we need highly visible and high stakes. We need to give the people that we're working with the opportunity to take big risks, to take visible risks with real stakes that are
Yep,
important.
and to take visible success and visible failure.
Absolutely.
And then last, you need to give people the shot at being the external face of the company, right?
Right.
You need to let other people who aren't you, actually go out and represent for the things that you have built and do. And if you do that, then it becomes their own, right? And they own it in a way that makes it theirs. So if inclusion is the soil, so you can think about inclusion as like, do you have good earth, right? Then diversity are the number of plants that you build, that you put in the soil, right? So you can have an incredibly diverse, an incredibly inclusive environment that is incredibly not diverse, right? And if we want to build systems that are better for people, if I want to be fundamentally more humane, then we have to have a vision of what it means to be human that's bigger than just yourself, or people who look like you, or who love like you, or who think or feel the way you do. That is weird. What's up, camera? Steady cam. Okay.
Yeah.
And if we fail to build these diverse systems, then what will happen is we'll build systems that are good for the small subset of humanity that we understand.
And we need to be team-oriented. So if you think back to one of the first slides that Adam showed, we had a team of bicyclists. And we were talking about how we need to build highly productive teams. I actually think that's a terrible slide. I think when we talk team-oriented, especially when we're talking about being inclusive and diverse, I think more of like, let's put on a metal show. And let's think about all of the people that it takes to put on a metal show. Because those people all have different capabilities, different skill sets, whereas the team of bicyclists, they're all good at cycling, right? But if we put on a rock show, we need to have a drummer, we need to have someone on the soundboard, we need to have someone running the lights. I think that's super better.
Yeah, for sure. And when you think about DevOps, one of the things that you hear people say a lot is that like you're sort of getting pushed into being a generalist, right? It's about developers deploying to production and being systems administrators or whatever. And I think that's false. It certainly wasn't true for the people who were doing the thing we call DevOps before there was a thing called DevOps, who then called it DevOps. What we are, and what I think everyone in this room is, we're well-connected specialists, right? We're great at the things that we do. I'm incredible at what I do, I think, God willing.
Yeah.
Just give me it, because I'm here on stage. Thank you, person over there. But what I am is very well connected to a lot of other people who do things I don't do, right? There's three different things to think about with team orientation that are important. So there's really three kinds of teams. So the first one is the high-functioning, like sort of cross-functional, well-connected, high communication team. That's the one that performs best, and it's the kind that people want to be on. The second kind of team that performs well is the dictatorial, terrible team. So the one that makes no bones about the fact that your job is to do what you're told to do right now, the way I told you to do it. You hate working on that team. It's miserable, but the results are actually better than the worst kind of team.
And that one?
That one is the one where someone tells you that they want you to be on a high-functioning, inclusive, smart team. Autonomous, and then treat you like you're supposed to just do what they tell you. That's the team that's like, woo, the worst, right? So you should decide to build actual great autonomous working teams with really, truly empowered people, or don't. But don't wind up in the terrible middle, because it's both worse for performance and worse for humans.
So there's this thing also about being context-driven. And what we need to have on our teams is a shared story. So this picture is a picture of Adam and his family.
It's true.
I've seen this picture and I've heard this story. And so I have the full context of this picture, and I'm going to share it with you now. So this is Adam and his wife, Katie, and his 6-year-old daughter, Elizabeth. And one day they decided to go to an amusement park. And it was an amusement park, maybe, there's one right next door, basically. Probably a little bit different, though. What Adam and Katie didn't realize, or Elizabeth for that matter, was
She'd
that
never been to an amusement park.
about half of the rides there were water rides, right? And so they walk into the park, and it's kind of a cool day in San Francisco. And so Adam and Katie are like, well, there's water rides, but we're going to be over here. And Elizabeth was like, ooh, water rides, water rides, water rides. We got to go on the water rides. So sure enough, they go on the water rides. And they're at the top of a big, log flume. And they go down the log flume and soaked to the bone. The entire family. Adam's soaked down to his underwear. I know this because I have the context.
It's super true.
Yeah.
I was really, really wet.
Really wet.
So wet.
So they go and they find there are these dryers, Like
Like
they're just
human
gonna
hair
blow
dryers.
giant hair dryers, going to cool them, dry them off.
That's
warm
supposed to
them
dry
up.
you off after the
Yes.
log ride of death.
Yes. So they stand under them for a minute or two, and Katie says, you know, this is just not going to work for us. I'm going to go buy us some new clothes. So she goes off and buys new clothes for everyone. So there's Elizabeth's new shirt. It was not Disney World. We don't really know which kind of park it was.
I don't know what cartoon that is.
Otherwise, we might
That's how you know it
recognize the
wasn't a very
character.
like high-end amusement park, is it's like some cartoon character.
But Adam got an awesome wolf shirt
It's
out of
so
it.
dreamy.
Look at that wolf.
Someday I'm going to wear it when I give this talk, but I'm nervous because it's such a dreamy shirt that people will look at the wolf and they won't even hear what I say. They'll just be like, "Whoa."
Mesmerized.
Mm-hmm.
Mesmerized. Yeah.
Yeah, so, and my wife has an awesome dolphin shirt.
Of course.
So here's the thing about context. Nathen hasn't heard this talk. He's never given it before. This is your first time
First
giving this
time
talk.
giving this talk.
Certainly my first time doing it with a pair. He's only maybe heard this talk maybe twice.
Once, twice.
Really.
Yeah.
We're giving twice because he works for me, so he had to be like, sure, man, twice. So
Good talk.
Yeah, good talk. It was awesome. I hate working for you. Okay, so yeah, so one time, he gets as much vacation as I do, for the record.
And I do what he tells me.
Yeah, right? Obey. But here's the thing. He's only heard this talk one time, but he told you that story. He hit every single highlight. And when you think about your backlog, like think about the team you work on right now and the project you're working on this instant, and think about the work that's you're doing. Do you know the full story of why that work is important in the same way that Nathen knew that story? And most of you don't. Right? And do you know that about the next thing in your backlog, about the fifth thing in your backlog? And the answer to that usually is no. Like usually it's some list of tasks and they're deconstructed, they're taken away from the context of the things that matter in the team. And the side effect of all of that is that we've lost sight of the fact that we even call those things in the backlog user stories. Like we call them stories, but there's no story involved. And very often we hand them off to other people with no conversation whatsoever. You never actually look someone in the eye and tell that story. And that ability of looking at someone and saying, right, like this is what happened to me. Like you've now heard Nathen tell the story of this log ride. If a month from now, 6 months from now, this slide comes up and someone's like, have you ever seen this picture of this weird dude with the beard and the wolf shirt and the kid with the generic cartoon character? You're gonna be like, yeah, I remember that story. That's that time that Nathen in the DevOps in the Tel Aviv. And that's what it means to be context-driven, right? Human beings work great. If you want to have autonomous teams, they need the context to make good decisions. And most of the time, we give them none of the context. We just give them the task. Okay, so if we're building these context-driven teams and we're helping people, we're sharing stories, we're connecting with people, you're looking them in the eye socket, right? Then one of the next things we have to do is embrace complexity. So how many people here have said, we're going to replace this system with something that's simpler? Raise your hand. Okay, you're probably wrong. And I'm going to tell you why. So I think, honestly, that we've sort of fetishized this idea of simplicity in technology in a way that's quite weird. So if you think about complexity in the world, complexity tends to make the world better, not worse. Like it gets more complex, not less, over time. And we build more and more complicated things, both in society and in technology. And those things, ideally, serve to make our lives better. So I'm going to illustrate embracing complexity here with an example. This is a Ford Model T. This stand right here is a Ford Model T. Do you guys know what a Ford Model T is? Is that too American? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to get super American with cars for like the next 5 slides, so I'm super sorry if like car culture doesn't happen in Israel. Just go with me on this little car journey. Okay, so this is a Ford Model T. How many people here think they could start a Ford Model T? Raise your hand. Okay. Yeah, you're not sure. Yeah, see, that's a smart one. What do you do to start a Ford Model T? Yeah, you turn the crank. Okay, so Nathen, yep, turn the crank. So, made a mistake. Nathen just broke his arm. Wasn't that a huge bummer? So here's the reason that this is a problem. So the Ford Model T is a very early car, one of the first cars ever made, and it does have a crank, but actually, first off, the crank did nothing. So you went up, you cranked it, you could crank all day, car's not starting. So FYI, no starting. You will crank it, but later. The real problem is that if you had gone through the steps and then decided to turn that crank, you did it with the wrong arm. Nathen's right-handed. How many people here are right-handed? Yeah, most of you, right? So most of you would break your arm when you started a Ford Model T. You also had another problem. The reason is that the engine will backfire. And when it backfires, it always goes in the wrong direction, and it will just break your arm with all the force of the engine, because it's literally connected to the shaft. So another problem is that how do you grip things? Hold that microphone. Show me how you grip it. Right. As basically human beings have done since we evolved from monkeys. So you would look at this shaft and you'd be like, I will grip the shaft with my hand. No, this is also dumb. Because even if he decides to use the right hand, he's like, oh, I should use my left arm. I heard this talk from Adam. It will still backfire, at which point you're holding onto it and it'll go this way and break your arm. Right? So you have to hold it with your thumb on the inside so that you don't actually grip the thingy so that it flies away from your hand safely. Okay, here's how you actually start a Ford Model T without breaking your arm. So the first thing you have to do is pull the choke lever. So there's a little, the choke is actually like a little hook that sits, how are we already, like 10 minutes left? Oh no, so you get a phone call. We should answer it. Okay, so you pull the choke, which you go reach underneath, you pull the choke, you engage the crank lever, you get in the car, you set the ignition to magneto.
Wait. Magneto?
Yeah, magneto. Yeah.
Is that a thing?
It is a thing.
You're just a comic book fan.
I am a comic book fan. It's not about Magneto with the X-Men. It's like a little battery.
Okay.
And then you put the timing stalk up and the handbrake up, the throttle to high. Putting the handbrake up actually puts the car in neutral. Go figure. And then you will start the engine. So then you get out, you crank the lever, right, with your left arm with the thumb behind the crank, and then the Model T will start. And huzzah. Here's the thing about the Ford Model T. How many people want a Ford Model T now? You want to drive one? Right, no one in the room. Here's the thing. If we took that right space over there and we just had a pile of parts and locked the doors and we said no one leaves this room without a working Ford Model T, we would get out of this room, probably today. Like we could probably sort it with just the humans in the room and like some tools because it's really, really simple. Like it's just not that complicated as of a thing. Once you know what it is, like we get it, an internal combustion engine, we will figure it out, right? We will not die. Because it's simple, but it's worse. It's not better, right? It did work, that was great, and it's very simple, but it was worse. Here, what we want when we think about complexity is we want to take complexity anytime what we get in return is ease. So if something's more complicated, but easier to use, easier to operate, easier to maintain, then we want to take that complexity, right? We don't want to strip that complexity away. And that's usually what you give up. When somebody tells you, boy, I want the system to be simpler, usually what they're saying is, let's make it less maintainable, let's make it less production worthy, let's pull out whatever the thing is that I don't need, which will make it easier, and what you wind up with is a Ford Model T that breaks your arm. Here's a good example. This is my car, it's an Audi, and you start it by pressing the button that says start engine, right? It doesn't even mention the word ignition anymore, right? Which was weird. Why do we call it ignition? You put the key in the ignition. You ignite your car. It was just a weird phrase. They've even done away with the phrase that didn't make sense because it didn't actually make sense. Now, here's the thing. If that same pile of parts was my Audi, right? And we were like, okay, everybody, doors are locked. We will die here, right? It will be Lord of the Flies in this room. This guy will eat me before we get out of here, right? We will never get home. Because it's so complicated, right? But still better. Nobody would rather drive a Ford Model T on the regular, right?
But it has to be maintainable also. So sticking with our theme of American cars here, this is NASCAR. How many of you are familiar with NASCAR?
Oh, great.
Oh, all right.
Israel loves NASCAR. What's up,
That's
Israel?
Awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah, we get some beer and some chicken wings.
That's right. Those of you that aren't familiar, it involves beer, chicken wings, and left turns.
And left turns.
That's NASCAR.
Only
That's
go
all you
left.
need to know, right?
It's the only turn you need.
But the cool thing about NASCAR is this car here is a Ford Fusion, which is a car that you can go into a dealer and buy and drive off on the street. But it's the same car that they're driving in this race. But they have a team of highly trained professionals that can change the oil, can change the tires, can tune the engine in less than 10 seconds when it comes off. And the reason that they can do that is because, one, they're trained professionals, and two, they've built a highly maintainable car, and they care about that maintenance.
Yep, and they're specialized, right? So it takes a team of specialists to do that, right? And that comes together with a driver and the fuel mixture and all the programming and all of those things. And that's what the software that's great, even if it's complex, does for you, right? They think about the maintenance. They think about what it's like to operate. They think about what it's like through the whole life cycle, not just your one little piece of the silo.
Imagine if the guy changing the tires had to switch with the driver. How do you think that would go?
Right, it would be awful,
Oh, it
right?
would be terrible.
Right, it's not generalists, you're specialists. Okay, so sometimes when we build things, we need to be willing to go deep. And one of the things we often do is we stop before we go deep enough into the problems that really would help us solve the really difficult things. So I built a piece of software called Habitat in the last year or so. And one of the things Habitat has inside of it is these little process supervisors that form a gossip network and they build a distributed system to manage things like application updates and rollouts and topologies and all this stuff.
Sounds complex.
It's way complex in comparison to what I could have built otherwise. The glorious thing is it's really easy to operate. But I didn't want to build it, right? The first prototypes that I built used etcd, they used console, they used anything I could because people tell you not to build two things, distributed systems and cryptography, right? And so I was like, distributed systems are hard, therefore I shall not build one, I will use this thing. And I was at Microsoft, and I was showing it to this dude, John Gossman, and John was like, the user experience of doing that kind of sucks because you're gonna have a production cliff now. You're gonna have to go deploy console and figure out how to do all of that stuff, and like now you can't use the software without it. And I was like, yeah, but otherwise I have to build a distributed system. And he was like, so what? Like, it's not that hard. Like, it should be gossip. I got like 100 dudes at Microsoft who've done that. Like, are you stupid? And I was like, well, but it's hard, And in the end, though, John was right, and I went on this like 6 months odyssey of like reading papers and trying to understand why I would need to do that. And the reason was I was trying to get at this user experience where as you deployed the software, the only thing you needed to run it in production was the software itself. And it was worth going deep to figure that out. And if I'd stopped before then, I would have been sacrificing this fundamentally human thing I wanted, which is that I want the software to be operable in this particular way. So sometimes you need to be willing to go deep enough to solve your problem, even if people tell you you shouldn't go there.
You have to be grounded in reality.
Right. It's not a free license to go do whatever you want.
Yes, you
Yeah.
cannot. So, Adam, what's your favorite city in the world?
New York City.
Okay.
Anybody else love
So-
New York City?
Yeah?
I love New York.
All right, so Adam, imagine for a minute, you just got elected, appointed, however it works.
However we do that here.
Yeah. You are now the city planner of Tel Aviv.
Yeah. I'd
What do
be
you-
an amazing city planner.
What are you going to do?
I got a plan. So,
All right.
so the first thing I would realize is that you have a lot of beautiful like Bauhaus buildings. And then you have some other like weird sort of brutalist buildings that like have less of the prettiness of the Bauhaus, but all of the hard angles, right? But they're made of really nice materials, like it's all white and very Mediterranean. I think that's cool. But I gotta tell you, it's no New York. So here's my big plan. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna bulldoze Tel Aviv, right? We're just gonna get rid of all of those, because honestly, who likes Bauhaus anyway? You know what I'm saying? UNESCO World Heritage Site be damned. We're in Israel, we do what we want. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so was that too close to home? Was that not? Sorry. So we're gonna bulldoze the thing, and then we're gonna rebuild it, and we're gonna have new Tel Aviv, and it's just gonna be like a replica of Manhattan. You know, like, and the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna build the Empire State Building out of as much of this rando Bauhaus material as we can get, like whatever it is, stucco and plastic. And then we're just gonna do that until we run out of stuff, and then we're gonna build a train to Jerusalem.
Yeah.
That's
good.
my plan. You guys vote for me? Man? Okay, this is what happens when you say things to other people like, let's just get rid of all the software that runs the billion-dollar company we run and replace it with Cloud Foundry. This is you being like, we're just gonna pave New York, fuck it. Like, this whole thing's stupid and bankrupt, right? Look, it's not stupid, it's not bankrupt, it runs your business. Like, you made good decisions, you weren't an idiot 10 years ago when you made those choices, they were fine choices. You might have to change them, sometimes you must go deep. But like, we often in technology are like, the whole thing's corrupt from the roots.
Burn it all
right?
down.
Just burn it all down, right? Don't do that, it's stupid. Like, don't burn it all down. Like, you can fix it, you can make it better. And if you did burn it all down, you would lose all of the wisdom that's hiding inside the systems you already have. And you would lose the very things that make you special.
So we also have to leverage our principles. So when it comes to things like Chef, we talk about principles of idempotence and convergence. And how much of that idempotence was built into Habitat?
None.
Like,
Yeah, that was weird, right? Also, like, I'm the DSL guy. Like, I brought you the Ruby DSL, and like, I think they're great. And Habitat
Right.
doesn't have one, right? It's just you write shell scripts.
Weird.
It's weird. Docker, immutability. How many people learned about immutability because you use Docker, right? Immutability is amazing. How many people think Docker gives you immutability? People are now used to my trick questions.
All right.
And I appreciate the loudness of the laughter, in case you don't understand. Look, it does give you immutability, but the value of immutability isn't, we tend to bond to the technology that shows us a principle first. So if you learned about idempotency and you learned about convergence from Chef, you tend to think, if I need idempotency or I need convergence, I will get it from Chef. Like that's the thing that gives me the thing, right? So you want immutability, therefore you must use Docker, right? The thing you need to understand is that these are primitives, these are small principles that when you understand their utility, they let the system work better. So a good Habitat example was Habitat uses a build system to build a package which it then deploys later. And the packages are immutable on disk, so they don't change once they've been built. And what we learned was, for example, the convergent piece happens at runtime. So when services come together, they will discover each other and then they will converge into the correct state. But at build time, the loop of like putting configuration in and building software is short enough that it's actually not better to have all the overhead of having to express convergence and idempotence. So we don't. You still have those properties. They exist later in the system because that's the right place for them. So rather than thinking about technology and saying, oh, obviously I need an immutable system because immutability is good, therefore I shall use X, you need to think about that property of immutability and how you're going to build a system that leverages that property in order to be better for the user.
And we have to remember our users. And there are three main users that we have to think about. The builders, the people that are building our systems, the people that are writing our software. The operators, those that have to run that software in production. Those two people aren't always the same. Sometimes they are, often they're not. And then we have to think about our consumers. Who's using our software? These are the three users, and we need to keep all three of them in mind. And one of them has to take on the complexity so that we can make the ease of use better for the others within the system.
And you usually choose the consumer for the easy experience.
Yeah, not the complexity.
As an FYI.
Yeah.
Okay, so I believe that we're at this crossroads where we get to decide as people and as people who want to build systems, as people who work together, whether technology is going to run us or whether we are going to run technology. Are we going to build another generation of technology that has someone up here in 20 years giving the exact same talk, talking about hate and being like, yeah, that sucks for me too? Or are we actually going to figure out how to build systems that make it better?
And we need to build those humane systems.
Yep, I believe that we need to take control of the horse, and that starts with deciding that the systems you build will be fundamentally humane ones. And I think
what are the steps?
You should start locally here at your job in Tel Aviv and in wherever you're from. You should focus on thinking about how to build these sorts of incredible humane systems. And you shouldn't settle for systems that aren't humane. So when you use systems, when you build systems, when you interact with systems or people who aren't thinking about you as a person, who aren't thinking about the impact it has on those three different classes of users and how to work together, you should refuse both to cooperate with that system or to not replace it.
And you need to be bold. And some of these things feel like obvious choices, but they're going to be bold, and it's going to require you to be bold to stand up and make the right hard choices.
Yep, sometimes it's difficult to say that the thing that you were building isn't right, or that the way the system works is wrong. And you need to be willing to engage in that conversation and to actually have the productive moment where you are willing to change and to create what you need to build.
So we're going to ask you to stand up one more time.
One more time.
Everybody up.
This is the way I get a free standing ovation. Super good talking trick. Okay, you're going to forget everything in this talk except for the water slide thing and this one slide, okay? So I'm just going to have you say it with me now, because if you forget everything else I said, when you go to work next, you need to start doing your work from a place of fundamental humanity. You need to be thinking about who it is that you're doing this thing for and what the experiences they are going to have in their life are based on the work that you do. And so if you can remember this one spirit of Ubuntu, then you will be so well on your way to doing that. So let's say it with me now. I am because you are.
I am because you are.
When you suffer, I suffer.
When you suffer, I suffer.
When you thrive, I thrive.
When you thrive, I thrive.
Thank you so much, DevOpsDays Tel Aviv.
Thank you.